Oh, sh A Quiet Place Part 2 is once again directed by John Krasinski, and this time he has sole credit of writing for Quiet Place Part 2, whereas the first, he co-wrote the first. So this movie takes place right after the events of the first one, and the Abbott family has now decided to leave the farm. They're going out to try to find more people that we found out in the first, at the end of the first one. The father, Lee, he seemed like he knew where some people were at, and now they are going out to try to see what's out in the rest of the world, see if they can find other people. Now, the opening of this movie is absolutely amazing. It opens with day one, before all of this went down, and it shows the events of what started all of this. The first time we see these creatures that kill people when they hear sound. And it's amazing. There is a one-shot tracking shot that is absolutely amazing. You see part of it in the trailer. It's just absolutely phenomenal. The first half hour of this movie was absolutely incredible, and the first 10-15 minutes of this day one was absolutely amazing. I was so engrossed in the first 10-15 minutes where we flash back to day one. The acting, once again, is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. And it's kind of surprised me that Millicent Simmonds, the daughter from the first one, is kind of the lead in this movie. I would say she has the most meat in this movie. Emily Blunt is still an integral part of this movie, but she nowhere near has the work that Millicent Simmonds' character has to do in this movie. And I was kind of surprised that Emily Blunt wasn't the lead character, but actually very happily surprised that Millicent Simmonds got to be more of the lead and got so much to do in this movie. I thought she did such a great job in this movie. And the fact that she is deaf in real life is even more amazing, that the fact she's giving such an amazing performance, and it's just incredible to see. Now, once again, this movie, just like the first, is technically amazing. The creature design, the tension, the cinematography, all of that is absolutely amazing in this movie. And it really was no surprise to me, considering how great the first one was with tension and cinematography and just the look and the technical aspects of the movie. It wasn't a surprise to me that the second one was so good with that. Something that worried me about this movie was the fact we might get a little too much of the creatures. In the first one, the movie did a great job of not showing us too much, not giving us too much of these creatures, just kind of hiding them in the shadows at times. And this movie does show the creatures more, but not an overload. It's not, this is a scary creature movie. It's more of that tension building movie of, you know, we can't make sounds. The premise of this movie that's from the first one is still intact, and I love that that premise is still intact. Now, something that I really didn't like about this movie is something that I've noticed in quite a few movies lately. If you go back from one of my way older reviews from 2017 from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, something I didn't like about that sequel was the fact that in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, we had the Guardians together, and that's why I love the first one, is I love the chemistry between all the Guardians together. And then in that movie, they just all split apart, and they all have their own sections of the movie. And that's something that this movie does. The Abbott family is together for the first half hour of this movie, and then all of them kind of split apart and go their separate ways. And I didn't love that. I loved what, like, Millicent Simmonds' character is doing in her section of being split away from the family, but at the same time, Emily Blunt's portion and the son's portion and the other new characters that are introduced, I wasn't as big of a fan. I wanted the family kind of together. That might be more of a personal thing for me, but for me it was a big negative. I didn't want to see this family split apart. I felt myself losing interest in the movie a little bit, and I felt the pacing of the movie a little bit more because of that. So that was something I'm not a fan of. And again, with the pacing, and it seemed with the writing, the script of this movie, it split off everyone. And because of that, I think the pacing of the film for me wasn't as great as the first one. The first movie really just goes very easily for me, and this one didn't as much. I did feel, even though it's not a long runtime, I did still feel the runtime of this movie. This movie's only about 90 minutes, but I felt like I was watching a 2-hour movie instead of that 90-minute movie. And there are certain characters that feel like their portion of them being split up and their adventure is more of them waiting for other characters. And for me, sitting in the audience, it kind of felt like it was more like the movie's waiting for a sequence to happen where there's noise so that the creatures will come and we'll get an action sequence. So for me, it kind of almost took me out, the fact that the family was split up and that one of the characters was essentially basically given nothing to do at the end of the day. And that was something that was a little disappointing for me. Now, my biggest problem with the first one was the fact that the ending felt a little over the top and ridiculous. I also have a problem with this ending, and it's not the fact that it's over the top and ridiculous. I actually liked the events leading up to the ending. It's just the fact that this movie kind of just ends. Really felt like there was, like, the moments leading up to the ending, I honestly thought there was, like, going to be 5, 10, 15 more minutes of the movie, but nope, it ended. Just like that. And there's probably going to be A Quiet Place Part 3. The first one made a whole bunch of money, so it wouldn't surprise me. It's the smart decision to do. But at the same time, this movie just kind of ended. And the last half hour for me just kind of felt more... What didn't feel like it was just setting up for a third movie. But at the end of the day, it just felt like it ended. And it wasn't an ending for me. It was just kind of, okay, there we go. It was a sequence and then an ending. There was no resolution for me for what happened throughout the rest of the movie. Now again, I'm not bashing on this movie. I think this movie is a great movie. It is technically fantastic. Again, the tension, the creature design, the acting in this movie is all amazing. John Krasinski, I think, is a director that we need to look out for, not just in like a horror sense. I think this man could do really terrific movies down the line. I think he's dipping his toes into directing right now and has really come out with 2 fantastic movies. I know he's done a couple other movies before this. I have not seen those movies. I think they're more like dramedies, I would say, at the end of the day, from what I've read about them. But he really has done a fantastic job with these first 2 movies. There really are some amazing shots in this movie that just had me in awe, especially the opening sequence. Put so much attention to detail in this movie and put so much care into this movie that I just cannot think of anything else in the fact that he is someone we need to look out for. In the end, I did really like this movie still. It's definitely not as good as the first. I really hate that we split the family apart and lost that family chemistry. But in the end, I can still recommend this movie. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. So, I have one more review coming up this weekend. I did go see Cruella the same night I saw this movie. I will have my thoughts on that movie up, hopefully tomorrow for you. Yeah, if there's any other movies you'd like to recommend, feel free to let me know, and I will see you soon.